Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly onto the East African coast, where the Indian Ocean breathes in slow, silver waves and a hidden Swahili port hums softly under the moonlight. You step barefoot onto warm sand, the tide curling around your ankles like it knows you don't quite belong here. The air smells faintly of salt, wood smoke, and something sweet, maybe coconut, maybe spice, maybe just the past lingering politely. Lanterns flicker in the distance, and somewhere beyond them, voices murmur in a rhythm you don't yet understand. You probably won't survive this, not because anything dramatic is about to happen, but because adjusting to a life that moves this slowly, this deliberately, might actually break your modern brain. No Wi-Fi, no coffee to go. Just you, the ocean, and a group of people who somehow made nighttime their busiest hour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move forward, following a narrow path of packed sand toward the harbor. The moon hangs low and generous, casting a pale glow across rows of small wooden dhows, slender boats with curved hulls that rock gently in the tide. This is a real and well-documented part of Swahili coastal life. For centuries, these dhows carried traders across the Indian Ocean, connecting East Africa with Arabia, India, and beyond. But here, tonight, something feels quieter, more secretive. The port itself seems tucked away, almost intentionally hidden between jagged coral outcrops. Historians still argue whether smaller Swahili ports like this one operated independently or served as quiet extensions of larger city-states like Kilwa or Mombasa. Either way, the place you've arrived in feels like it prefers not to be found too easily, like it's politely ghosting history. A man passes you carrying a bundle of nets over his shoulder. He nods, not surprised to see you, which is either comforting or deeply suspicious, probably best not to overthink it. His footsteps crunch softly on coral gravel as he disappears toward the shoreline, where a handful of figures stand knee-deep in water, preparing something you can't quite see. The buildings nearby are low and sturdy, made from coral stone, another authentic feature of Swahili architecture. Even in the dim light, you can make out carved wooden doors, their patterns intricate and deliberate, like someone spent an entire afternoon thinking, yes, this swirl really brings the entrance together. A soft breeze moves through the alleys, carrying with it the faint clink of pottery and the rustle of woven mats. You pass a small open courtyard where a woman stirs something in a clay pot, the steam rising in lazy spirals. Coconut milk, perhaps, or spiced rice, or something you'd absolutely try once and then spend the rest of your life attempting to recreate unsuccessfully. Closer to the harbor, the activity increases, but it's not loud. There's no shouting, no chaos, just quiet coordination. Hands passing goods, soft conversations, the occasional low laugh. It's trade, yes, but it feels almost respectful, as if everyone has agreed not to disturb the night too much. And then you notice it, the real reason everything is happening now. The moonlight. It spills across the water in a shimmering path, illuminating the shallows with surprising clarity. Shapes move beneath the surface, shadows that glide and pause, then vanish again. You realize slowly that the ocean itself is part of the marketplace tonight. A boy nearby kneels at the edge of a dhow, carefully coiling a rope. He glances up at you and smiles, then gestures toward the water as if to say, "Wait for it." You do, because at this point, you're fully committed to whatever mysterious nighttime business is unfolding. Some scholars suggest that coastal communities timed certain activities, like fishing or gathering marine resources, around lunar cycles, using the moon's brightness and tidal influence to their advantage. Others debate how organized or ritualized these practices were. But standing here now, watching the water glow like liquid silver, it's hard not to believe there's something intentional about it. A soft splash breaks the surface, then another. Figures begin to emerge from the water, moving with practiced ease. They carry small bundles, nets or shells, objects that catch the moonlight and briefly flash like tiny stars before being passed up onto the boats. Divers. You didn't expect that. Or maybe you did, but not like this. Not so quiet. Not so calm. One of them climbs onto the shore, water dripping from her shoulders, and sets down a small woven basket filled with something pale and rounded. Shells, you think, or pearls, or something in between. She doesn't rush. No one does. Because here, in this hidden port, under a patient moon, time doesn't push. It just flows. And you, somehow, have stepped right into it. You drift further inland, leaving the shoreline's soft shimmer behind, though the sound of the tide never quite lets you go. It follows you, quiet, steady, like a reminder that everything here begins and ends with the ocean. The path beneath your feet shifts from sand to packed coral and stone, and soon you find yourself entering a narrow street lined with low coral houses, their pale walls glowing faintly under hanging lanterns. These homes are real markers of Swahili coastal life, built from coral rag and lime, designed to stay cool even in the tropical heat. The doors, though, are what draw your attention. Thick, carved wood, patterned with geometric shapes and floral designs, each one slightly different. Some historians say these carvings reflected wealth or status. Others believe they told quiet stories about the families inside. Either way, you briefly consider upgrading your own front door before remembering you probably don't even clean the one you have now. A soft murmur of voices leads you to a small open space, a kind of market, though it feels far removed from anything busy or chaotic. Mats are spread neatly across the ground, displaying goods in careful arrangements: dried fish, small clay jars, woven baskets, and bundles of herbs tied with thin strips of palm fiber. The colors are muted in the moonlight, but the textures stand out: rough, smooth, coiled, polished. Trade is happening here, but it's almost entirely wordless. A woman places a handful of shells onto a mat, and in exchange she receives a small pouch that gives off the faint scent of cloves. This connects to a broader historical truth. The Swahili coast was deeply involved in the Indian Ocean trade network, where goods like ivory, gold, spices, and textiles moved between Africa, Arabia, and Asia. But here, in this quieter corner, the scale feels smaller, more personal. You pass a man carefully weighing something using a simple balance scale. He adjusts it with slow precision, as if time itself is watching. Historians still argue whether these smaller ports used standardized systems of measurement or relied more on trust and local custom. Watching him now, it feels like a mix of both, science and instinct, balanced as delicately as the scale in his hands. A child darts past you, carrying a small clay cup, nearly bumping into your side before disappearing into a nearby doorway. No one scolds him, no one rushes. Even small chaos here seems relaxed. It's almost suspiciously peaceful. You half expect someone to pop out and say, "All right, that's enough calm for one night." But no, this is just how things are. In one corner, an older woman sits, grinding something with a stone pestle, her movements slow and rhythmic.
The scent that rises is warm and earthy, perhaps cinnamon or cardamom, both of which were traded widely along this coast. A quirky detail, some coastal communities were known to blend spices not just for food, but for scenting clothes and even hair. Essentially ancient perfume, but with more effort and fewer brand deals. You pause near a low wall, watching as goods quietly change hands. There's no shouting of prices, no competition, just a shared understanding, a kind of trust that feels almost foreign to you. And yet, beneath it all, you sense something deeper, something tied to the timing, the moon, the tides. Because this market, like the divers you saw earlier, doesn't exist in isolation. It moves in rhythm with the sea. And somewhere beyond these coral walls, those divers are still working, still slipping beneath the surface, bringing up whatever the ocean is willing to give tonight. You realize slowly that this entire place, every quiet exchange, every flicker of lantern light, is part of something much larger, a system built not on speed, but on patience, and you're only just beginning to understand it.
You find your way back toward the shoreline, almost without thinking, as if something beneath the surface is gently calling you again. The lantern-lit market fades behind you, replaced by the open stretch of moonlit water where the divers continue their quiet, deliberate work. The tide has shifted slightly, pulling back just enough to reveal darker patches beneath the surface, channels, reefs, and hidden pockets where the ocean keeps its small secrets. A group of men stands near a narrow doe, preparing for another descent. You move closer, careful not to interrupt, though no one seems particularly concerned by your presence. One of them ties a thin cord around his waist, the other end looped loosely in his hand. It's a simple safety measure. If something goes wrong, someone above can pull him back. Not exactly modern scuba gear, but effective in its own calm, low-tech way. Historically, pearl diving and shell gathering were practiced across the Indian Ocean, especially in places like the Persian Gulf. Along the Swahili coast, while large-scale pearl industries weren't as dominant, divers still collected shells, coral, and other valuable marine resources. Some historians suggest these nighttime dives were timed for better visibility and calmer waters, while others argue it was more about tradition and habit than pure efficiency. Either way, the moon tonight is doing most of the heavy lifting. One diver steps forward. He takes a slow breath, not dramatic, not rushed, and then slips into the water with barely a sound. Just a ripple, then stillness. You lean slightly, trying to follow his movement, but he's already gone, swallowed by the soft glow beneath the surface. You wait, and wait. Long enough that your modern brain starts doing that thing where it panics on someone else's behalf. You'd be out of breath just watching this. Meanwhile, somewhere below, he's moving with practiced ease, navigating a world that feels completely inaccessible to you. A soft tug on the rope. The man above responds instantly, pulling with steady strength. Moments later, the diver reappears, breaking the surface with a quiet exhale. No gasping, no drama, just a calm return, like he stepped out of another room rather than another world. In his hand, he holds a cluster of shells, small, pale, and faintly iridescent. They catch the moonlight in a way that makes them seem almost alive. He places them into a woven basket, already half filled with similar finds. Not every shell will hold something valuable, of course. In fact, most won't. It's a patient game of chance, played over hours, nights, and entire seasons. A younger boy nearby watches closely, mimicking the motions with his hands, as if practicing in the air. Maybe one day he'll dive too, or maybe he already has, in shallower waters. Skills like this are often passed down quietly through observation rather than instruction, like riding a bike, except the bike is the ocean, and it does not care if you fall off. A quirky detail drifts into your mind. In some diving cultures, people believed certain charms or small rituals could help protect them underwater, anything from whispered prayers to carrying specific shells. Whether it worked or not is up for debate.
Historians still argue whether these practices were rooted in spiritual belief or simply a way to calm the nerves before doing something objectively risky. Another diver surfaces, this time with a piece of coral, branching and delicate. It's passed along, inspected briefly, then added to a separate pile. Everything has its place. Everything has a purpose. You notice how little is wasted. Even broken shells are kept, perhaps for tools, decoration, or trade. It's a system built on respect for the sea, for the materials, for the effort it takes to retrieve them. Not exactly a buy one, get one free situation. The rhythm continues. Dive, wait, return. No rush, no pressure, just repetition, guided by breath and moonlight. And as you stand there, watching the quiet exchange between human and ocean, you begin to understand something subtle but important. This isn't just work. It's trust. Trust that the sea will give enough. Trust that the body will hold. Trust that the night will last just a little longer. And for now, under this steady silver glow, it does.
You remain by the shoreline, but the scene begins to widen, almost without you noticing. More boats have arrived, quietly, as everything does here, sliding into the harbor like thoughts you didn't realize you were having. Their sails are lowered, their wooden frames creaking softly as they settle into place. These are dhows, the same vessels that, for centuries, carried goods across the Indian Ocean using the predictable rhythm of the monsoon winds. A real, well-known system. Sailors would ride seasonal winds to travel between East Africa, Arabia, and India, then wait months for the winds to reverse and carry them home again. Tonight, though, no one seems in a hurry to leave. You watch as unfamiliar figures step onto the shore. Their clothing is slightly different. Longer robes, different wraps, subtle variations that hint at distant origins. One man carries a small chest, its surface polished smooth, while another carefully lifts bundles wrapped in cloth. No dramatic introductions, no announcements, just quiet arrivals, like they've done this 100 times before. Trade begins almost immediately, but again, it's soft, measured. A bundle is opened to reveal dried spices, their scent drifting into the air. Clove, cinnamon, maybe even a hint of nutmeg. These were among the most valuable goods in the Indian Ocean trade, often traveling thousands of miles. In return, local traders bring forward ivory carvings, tortoiseshell pieces, and woven goods. It's a meeting of worlds, but without any of the noise you might expect. You step closer, noticing a man pouring a dark liquid into small cups, coffee perhaps. The Swahili coast played a role in the early spread of coffee culture, especially through connections with Arabia. You're offered a cup, not verbally, just a small nod, and you accept. It's strong, slightly bitter, and grounding in a way that feels almost too modern for this setting. Careful though, 1 cup might be fine, 3 and you'll be wide awake while everyone else is trying to sleep through history. A light joke drifts through your mind. Imagine explaining takeaway coffee to these traders. Yes, I need this in a paper cup, and also I'm late for nothing in particular. Nearby, 2 men examine a piece of fabric, fine, patterned, clearly imported. They run it between their fingers, testing its quality. Textiles were a major part of trade, especially from India, and were often exchanged for African goods like gold or ivory. Historians still argue whether smaller ports like this one handled high-value trade directly or acted as intermediaries, passing goods along to larger city-states. Watching this exchange, it feels like both possibilities are quietly true. A sailor gestures toward the horizon, speaking in a language you don't fully understand, though a few words feel familiar, echoes of Arabic, maybe Persian. The Swahili language itself is a blend, shaped by centuries of interaction. It's a reminder that this coast was never isolated. It was connected, deeply, constantly, to a wider world. And yet, the pace never changes. Even with new arrivals, new goods, new stories, everything remains calm. There's no sense of urgency, no pressure to maximize or rush. It's almost unsettling in the best possible way. A quirky detail catches your attention. One trader carefully unwraps a small object, a simple glass bead. It doesn't look like much, but beads like these were highly valued and widely traded across Africa. Sometimes the smallest items carried the greatest meaning. You briefly consider how many plastic things you own that no one will ever trade for anything. It's humbling. The divers are still at work in the background, their rhythm unchanged. The market behind you continues its quiet exchanges, and here, at the edge of land and sea, goods move between hands with a kind of gentle certainty. You begin to see it clearly now. This port isn't just a place, it's a meeting point of water and land, of night and work, of distant cultures that somehow manage to understand each other without raising their voices. And as the moon hangs steady above, guiding ships and divers alike, you realize that everything here depends on timing. The winds, the tides, the trust between strangers, all of it moving together, slowly, like a story that refuses to rush to its ending. You begin to notice the shift before you fully understand it. It's subtle, like the moment just before dawn when the world hasn't changed yet, but something in the air quietly suggests it will. The moon, once bright and steady, has started its slow descent, pulling the silver light away from the water inch by inch. The harbor softens, shadows stretch, movements become fewer, slower. The divers return one by one, their baskets no longer empty, but not overflowing either. Enough, just enough. No one seems disappointed. That, in itself, feels like a lesson you weren't expecting to learn tonight. You walk along the edge of the water, where the tide has crept back in, smoothing over footprints and small disturbances. The ocean is already erasing the evidence of everything that happened here. If you arrive now, you might never guess that an entire network of trade, labor, and quiet exchange had filled this space just hours before. Some historians believe that many smaller Swahili ports like this one were eventually abandoned due to shifting trade routes, silting harbors, or changing political centers. Others suggest environmental factors, rising or falling sea levels, coral changes, or even storms that slowly made certain locations less viable. Historians still argue whether these ports disappeared suddenly or faded gradually, like a story losing its voice. Standing here, it feels like the latter. There's no sign of collapse, no dramatic ending, just a slow thinning, fewer boats, fewer voices, the kind of disappearance that happens so gently no one notices until it's already complete. A man near the dhow finishes tying off a rope, then pauses, looking out over the water, not in sadness, not even in reflection, just looking, as if this moment, like all the others, is enough on its own. A quirky thought drifts in. Somewhere in the future, people will argue about places like this using fragments, broken pottery, coral walls, scattered beads, and build entire theories from them. Meanwhile, the people who actually lived here were just trying to get through the night, trade a few goods, maybe enjoy a cup of coffee, and not drop anything important into the ocean. The lanterns begin to dim, one by one. Not blown out, just left to fade as the sky lightens slightly at the edges. The market behind you is nearly gone now, mats rolled up, goods packed away, no trace left behind except the faint imprint of where things once rested. You take a slow breath, noticing how quiet everything has become. And then, almost without transition, the story begins to soften. The shoreline stretches out before you, now touched with the earliest hint of dawn. The colors are gentler,
blues fading into pale gold, the water no longer silver, but calm and glass-like. The dhows rest quietly, their work paused, their shapes blending into the horizon. You feel your steps slow, your thoughts quieting, as if the rhythm of the place has finally settled into you. The people here are gone from view now, but not entirely absent. Their movements, their voices, their quiet routines still linger in the air, like warmth left behind after a fire has gone out. You don't need to see them anymore to know they were here. And maybe that's the point. Not everything is meant to last in a visible way. Some places exist fully, beautifully, and then slip away, leaving only impressions, like footprints in sand just before the tide returns. You let your gaze rest on the water, watching the smallest ripples form and fade. The ocean doesn't hurry. It never did. And now, neither do you. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders soften. The edges of the world blur just a little. There's nothing left to follow, nothing left to figure out, just the gentle rise and fall of the tide, the quiet memory of lantern light, and the feeling of having been somewhere that no longer asks anything of you. You stay there for a moment longer, suspended between night and morning, past and present, and then, slowly, you let it all drift away.